Okay, I think we'll go ahead. We have some amazing speakers with us today. Ishwar Chandrasmurtiswaran from NIH, Dawi Lin from ImmPort, also from NIH, and myself, Ida Sim from Vivli and from UCSF. The agenda today, we'll start off with reviewing the upcoming changes in the NIH data sharing and management policy. We'll have an introduction to Vivli and how it works to support NIH researchers as they share their data from NIH-funded work. We'll have a case study of how Vivli works with partner platforms, including domain repositories from NIH, and we'll have a live demonstration of the Vivli platform followed with a Q&A. So we're going to start off now with a presentation from Ishwar, and let me hand it over to you, Ishwar, and I will forward the slides for you.
Thank you, Ida, and thank you to Vivli and the team for organizing this presentation over here. So I'll be really quick over here. My name is Ishwar Chandramalishwaran. I'm in the Office of Data Science Strategy at the NIH, situated in the Office of the Director. And the office itself, if we move on to the next slide, is tasked with leading the implementation of the NIH Strategic Plan for Data Science. You can move to the next slide. Yep, thank you. And the way we do this is through scientific, technical, and operational collaboration and coordination across all the NIH Institute centers and offices to achieve our vision of a modernized, integrated, fair biomedical data ecosystem. And the next slide basically outlines the goals and objectives of the strategic plan that comprise of 5 different streams or pillars, ranging from the data infrastructure, modernizing the data and the ecosystem itself, looking at software tools, the workforce behind that, and the overall stewardship and sustainability of the resources, details of which are outlined in the strategic plan itself. The next slide. Why do we want to modernize the system? Because, of course, as Ida mentioned, we have a new policy coming into effect for data management and sharing that we'll go into in just a second. But more importantly, we want to look at the data as an overall ecosystem, reduce or eliminate the silos, optimize costs for managing the data overall, disentangle resources from research projects, because many of these resources evolve out of research projects and kind of get embedded in them. And most importantly, we want to allow for better sharing, discovery, and reuse for this data to allow ability to answer questions that we can't quite answer today. The next slide basically addresses on some of the flagship efforts under the ecosystem modernization. I'll just touch on this basically. One is to look at existing data that we have generated over the course of many flagship programs across NIH and enhance their fairness, which is just enhance their findability, accessibility, interoperability, and reusability through various administrative supplement awards that we've given over the last 2.5 years or so. And then there are 2 other flagship programs, of which one that was what the focus of this talk and this event is. The first one is the Data Repositories and Knowledge Base Program, which is a funded initiative, funding opportunity for both data repositories and knowledge bases that was launched in 2020. And this is being renewed in 2023 again to allow for funding of investigator-initiated early stage and established data repositories and knowledge bases. The second flagship program is really the Generalist Repository Ecosystem Initiative, which is what Vivli is being funded under to really work with other generalist repositories and include all of them as part of the larger NIH ecosystem to enhance discoverability and use of NIH-funded data in these repositories. And what we're essentially hoping that the repositories would work together to do is establish some common and consistent capabilities between and across them to make the discovery of NIH-funded data easier, and also, in general, raise the awareness to adopt FAIR principles and encourage sharing and reuse of data across the community. The next slide basically says by doing this and looking at it from an ecosystem perspective, we hope to kind of create this larger distributed ecosystem comprising of domain-specific repositories, generalized repositories, and PubMed Central, where you have directly data, so supplementary materials and data associated with publications, as well as very large data sets in cloud infrastructure, either directly or indirectly funded by NIH. The next slide. And why are we doing all of this is, of course, the new policy itself, data management and sharing, that was released in October 2020. That goes into effect in 2023, that requires all researchers to prospectively plan for how their data would be preserved and shared, and that requires them to submit a data management and sharing plan. We have supplementary guidance associated with how a supplementary plan should be developed. We also have guidance on how associated costs for that would be supported for applicants. And we also have some supplementary guidance on how to choose a repository for the type of data that you have, which is where Vivli falls into this larger ecosystem as a potential repository for relevant data sets. And so without further ado, let me go a little bit more into the GRAY initiative itself. What we want the repositories to do is implement consistent capabilities that are captured in that notice, which addresses the desirable characteristics of repositories, and work with other generalist repositories to be able to create better access to discovery of NIH-funded data. We also want the generalist repository to conduct overall outreach and train folks on fair data practices and engage the research community in kind of enhancing some of the supporting the use cases that the generalist repositories fund. But we hope that the expected outcomes here would be to making data sharing easier for researchers, improving discoverability, specifically of NIH-funded data, of course, increasing the reproducibility of research, and encourage secondary use of data. And so as part of this initiative, we have 6 generalist repositories funded: Dataverse, Dryad, Figshare, Mendeley Data, Open Science Framework, and of course, Vivli. So without further, you can find more about the program and other related initiatives at datascience.nih.gov, and I can be reached at my particulars over here. So just want to take 10 seconds to put in a plug for a couple of other efforts that we have ongoing to incentivize folks to share data. We are awarding a prize for those who can tell a good story and showcase examples of good data sharing and reuse practices. This is a partnership we've established with FASIP, and the prize itself launched in May and closes in July. But folks interested in registering and submitting an application need to register by June 28th. You can find more details on the prize at herox.com/dataworks. The next plugin that I wanted to do is for a data sharing and reuse seminar series, where again we showcase exemplars from our funded efforts, where people have a good story to tell about how they have shared or reused data. This is a series that we've had for the last year that is on every month, Friday at 12 noon Eastern time. You can learn about and watch previous recordings at this website over here. And we have an upcoming seminar on July 8th, where Dr. Hudson and Liu will share about how they've shared data, software, and models from a cancer moonshot initiative that was funded some time ago. So without further ado, I'll pass this back on to Ida.
Great, thank you so much for that overview. So now we're going to introduce you to Vivli and Vivli's role in the Generalist Repository Initiative. Vivli is a nonprofit organization, and we have several primary functions, all of which are important and interlinking. One is the convening function. We convene various stakeholders from biomedical industry, academia, government funders, and patient advocates. A lot of our work is around harmonizing language agreements and to be part of the broader movement to move the culture of science towards data sharing. And of course, as part of our work, we also advocate and we oversee the implementation of a platform, which we'll be describing more today, a secure state-of-the-art data sharing and computing platform. We serve the international community, including trials from any disease, country, sponsor, funder, or investigator. We are indeed generalist. We support open search, robust security, and offer modern tools and technologies, as we will describe. So by the numbers, Vivli today has over 6,400 trials that you can search for and request. And that is the largest in the world for a clinical trial data sharing platform. We have over 40 members, which I will describe in a little bit. And today we launched about 4 years ago, and we have had 95 public disclosures, and that's publications primarily, abstracts and other disclosures of the results of work done with Vivli, with data that's been accessed from Vivli. And this is really part of a network of institutions and academia and foundations. The members that we have, going to go through first the industry members, and you can see them listed here. We have big pharma, small pharma, biotech, and so forth. And we're very proud and ongoingly excited to work with our industry partners. We also have partners from academic and nonprofit foundations, as you see here. I would call out the NIH related ones: BioLINCC, NIH HEAL Initiative, ImmPort, and Access Clinical Data from NIAID. You also note here some academic members: Duke, Harvard, Hopkins, and UCSF, and of course many other nonprofit funders in various disease spaces as well. This is really a powerful network, and we work very closely with our partners to share opportunities to help move the culture forward. It's been a very fruitful collaboration, and we look forward, of course, to partnering with Gray as we go forward as well. So how does Vivli work? We're going to start off first with talking about a data requester. So if a researcher, could be NIH funded, could be non, it could be just a person, a citizen anywhere in the world, wants to come to Vivli and ask for the data from one or more of the 6,400 trials. How does that work? Well, they come to the Vivli platform and they search it. You don't need any, don't need to log in or anything. It's all free. Everything is free for the data requester. They search for what they want, and if they request some data sets, and being clear here, the data sets are of participant level data of completed clinical trials. If they want to make a request, they do make an account, they submit a data request, which will be reviewed according to the contributor's publicly stated requirements. So some of the investigators who put their studies onto Vivli want to have a data request reviewed, and some of them don't, for example. And Vivli manages all of that in the background. And if the request needs to be reviewed and approved, that will happen also with Vivli support and management in the back. And then the requester will be notified that their request has been approved and that they can access and download data. Or if the data needs to be put into a secure environment, Vivli provides a secure environment with analytical tools that allow you to work on data that comes from multiple data contributors. And we'll show that in our demo as well. And of course, in the end, the data requester, after they've gotten access to the data and have completed their analyses, that the research results actually will be assigned a DOI in and of itself. And they do have a responsibility to Vivli and really to the broader scientific community to inform us about what they found as they analyze their data. And that's where we get the public disclosures and the public publication requirements allow others to come to Vivli and say, who has asked for data and what have they done with it and where's the publication that arose from it. So that's the process for people who are requesting the data. What do they get? They get a data package, which includes a study protocol, data dictionary, statistical analysis plan. For those that have it, a clinical study report, and then the data set itself of the participant level data. This includes the final cleaned data that is de-identified as anonymized, and we'll describe that a little bit, and then an anonymization report outlining the approach used to anonymize the data. Other components of the data package that are optional include the analytic code. Sometimes it's the analysis ready data set as opposed to the full data set. And then case report forms also are something that some contributors wish to share. So obviously thinking about the people who are submitting the data, this is what's going to be in the data package that's submitted to Vivli. So Vivli offers a secure and flexible research environment For data contributors who don't want to have their participant level data sort of just downloaded by data requesters, we have an ability to provision that data into a secure environment. This is in Azure. So data sets from different multiple data contributors can come together, and in that environment, software tools are available for you to use. And you see the list there on the right of the figure. As a data requester, you can also bring your own data sets to combine with data sets that you've gotten approval for from Vivli. You can bring your own statistical software and scripts. So it's really very flexible and powerful. So we are very happy to be part of the NIH Generalist Repository that Ishwar described. As he said, Gray is working to enhance the whole biomedical data ecosystem for finding and sharing data from NIH-funded studies. So Vivli is the only one of the generalist repositories to focus on sharing participant-level data from clinical trials. Because of the nature of human data in clinical trials, there are some different considerations that are foremost in many investigators' minds, and Vivli was really built to address those concerns and those opportunities. So for NIH-funded clinical research, investigators can deposit data either into a domain repository, whether it's cardiovascular or allergy, immunology, or they can deposit into Vivli. And for trials that are in domains that don't have a domain-specific repository, of course, they're welcome in Vivli as well. So how does Vivli support NIH-funded investigators? And as the data sharing requirements come into play in January of 2023, we're really going to be positioned well to support NIH-funded investigators. So what we provide is a one-stop shop for sharing completed clinical trial data with the broader scientific community. And investigators can do this in two ways. One is to share that data directly through Vivli, and I'll step through that in a little bit. Or they can share their data through partner platforms, including the NIH domain repositories, and that's what we're going to focus on today as well. Now we will talk through BioLINCC and also a presentation from DaWiLin on ImmPort. A note that all the offerings from Vivli are no charge to academic investigators. So to share directly through Vivli, this is the first option. What the investigator would do would complete a data contribution form and signed a data contributor agreement. They will anonymize the data set and then upload it to Vivli with support from Vivli throughout this process. Once the data set is uploaded to Vivli and all the processes are complete, a DOI, a unique DOI, will be provided with the citation to that data set. Investigators can request a summary report of who had requested their data. I can imagine this would be useful later on when you're coming up for promotions to see how many people have requested your data set. Other details about the Vivli offerings, Vivli does offer an expedited review for NIH-funded investigators, academic investigators. Data requests that come in, Vivli would check that the requesting team has a qualified statistician, that the proposal is appropriate and completed. People do need to list their hypotheses, the analytic methods, their funding, and so forth. We did say that the data has to be anonymized before it is accepted on Vivli, so that study team can either anonymize it themselves, and some institutions have anonymization services that they provide, or Vivli has specialist anonymization vendors as well for additional cost. Data that is provisioned to Vivli can be then downloaded once the data requester has had their request approved and their data use agreements are signed. So I'm going to go now to sharing through partner platforms. This is the other way that NIH-funded investigators can share the data. This is through something we call cross-platform sharing, where the data is deposited to another platform, but is searchable and requestable through Vivli. And you see here some of our partner platforms. And again, calling out the NIH ones, BioLINCC, ImmPort, HEAL, and Access Clinical Data. So how does this work? It works first with the partner platform joining Vivli. The investigator then deposits data into that partner platform. The requester who comes to Vivli request data from the partner platform and maybe on Vivli, maybe other partner platforms. And Vivli routes that request through to different partner platforms, where the partner platforms then take over They use their own workflows to decide to review the request, to approve it, execute data use agreements, and if approved, then data is provisioned then into the secure Vivli analytic environment. So data from multiple data sources, as I said, can come together. So stepping through how this works for one of our partners, BioLINCC. You're all familiar with BioLINCC, I'm sure. One of our founding members of Vivli, back in July of 2018, we're so grateful for that partnership. We now have 220 BioLINCC studies that are available for sharing via Vivli. And to date, 22 of those studies have been requested. 20 of those requests were filled directly from BioLINCC. So people came to Vivli, searched, made a request, and the BioLINCC provisioned the data. So expanding discoverability and reuse through Vivli as well, augmenting the work of BioLINCC already. Two requests actually requested BioLINCC data and data from other Vivli members. And one of them is this one, a systematic review and individual patient data meta-analysis for idiopathic pulmonary fibrosis. And you see here that this request from the University of Nottingham requested data from two partner platforms, BioLINCC and Johnson & Johnson, in addition to data from Boehringer Ingelheim and Roche, which are partners of Vivli and have their data available through Vivli directly. So data from all four of these data sources were brought together into a secure environment for Dr. Khan and his team to work on. And indeed, there have been 3 publications already, as you see. So a really powerful way to bridge multiple platforms. So now we're going to go on and let Dawei Lin from ImmPort describe how this works with yet another NIH repository, very similar to the BioLINCC situation, by going in a little deeper onto ImmPort. So I'm going to hand over now to Dawei.
Hi, thanks, Ada, and thanks, Vivli, for the invitation. I'm also very privileged to represent our large and dedicated team of ImmPort, including a research unit at the UCSF and a contract unit at the Paraton, and also my fellow program officers at the DATE NIAID. And ImmPort is a repository created 20 years ago as a home for immunological research data, and mainly serve the division of allergy, immunology, and transplantation at NIAID, which fund around 40% of all NIH research, as shown in the left, the right of the slide. And the ImmPort in recent years also help support a couple of other ICs and nonprofit organizations for their public data sharing commitment. And the mission of ImmPort is to maximize the value of those data in 2 ways. One is to make a long-term preservation of the data. The second way is to reuse the data to make new discoveries. And so next slide is about the long-term preservation. On the left of the slide is a screenshot of the current ImmPort website. ImmPort currently have 548 studies in its collection, including 164 clinical trials. The ImmPort data not only rich in scientific topics, but also there's more than 35 different data types. And one of the unique value of ImmPort is that, for example, is not let people know what if a vaccine work or not, but also allow them to study why. A lot of ImmPort data represent the forefront of the immunological research. And for example, there's now 28 studies related to the COVID research. Next slide is about reuse. The slide is a survey of the publication mentioned ImmPort, and you can see the mention in publication is increased over time, but last 2 years have quite a jump. And those trend is not just reflect the interest in ImmPort data, but also the quality that the ImmPort data provide. ImmPort is one of the first repository certified by Culture Seal as the trustworthy data repository, and ImmPort support the trust principles. And in essence, it is not committed just make the ImmPort data fair, but also make the data fair long term. Next slide. I just want to give a quick use case of what is the reuse of ImmPort data look like. ImmPort data normally start with a disease question, but how about the immune system look like for health individuals? And a tool, a Boots group, try to answer that question by cleverly reuse the control arms of the clinical trial data in ImmPort. There's more than 10,000 subjects like that. And so they construct a reference of the health individuals, the immune profile, and open a lot of doors for immunological research. So that's one example. And next slide. So ImmPort data cannot be fully realized without the tools and the partnerships like Vivli. And this is on the slide is a list of the resources around ImmPort. That's how we engage with the community and to maximize its use. And next slide. I just want to highlight a wonderful collaborations with the Vivli. Like to Vivli, ImmPort can provide high quality clinical trial data and associate the mechanistic data. And so what the Vivli have provided to ImmPort is to expose those data to the researchers that the ImmPort can never reach out on its own. And there is some data provided by the Vivli that there is 11 data requests, and there was 9 directly from Vivli to ImmPort, and 2 involve the integrating ImmPort data along with the other data from other Vivli numbers. And I should mention that this statistics is consistent with our internal Google Analytics monitoring by ImmPort team. So we definitely expect this number to grow, as well as other collaborations with Vivli. And that's what I want to stop, and happy to answer questions if there's any. Thank you.
Great, thank you so much, Dawei. So now we're going to move on, and please, if you have questions along the way, please feel free to type them into the Q&A. We're collecting them and teeing them up for our Q&A session, so please feel free to drop your questions in there as well. So the next part of this webinar is a demonstration of requesting data on the Vivli platform, and that will be done by Stan Newman from Vivli to review searching and making a data request. We're going to show here this process of requesting data from partner platforms and then the data coming into the research environment. So I am going to stop sharing, and Stan is going to share.
Thank you, Ida. Again, what we're going to do this morning is just take a quick look at the Vivli platform, partly just to take what Ida described earlier and make it a little bit more concrete so you can visualize it. The researcher's experience starts with a process of searching for studies, not surprisingly. Let's suppose that I'm interested in the overly broad topic of treatment options for infectious diseases. I can start out by doing a query about COVID. This particular combination of COVID and treatment options results in the system presenting me with 3 studies that meet that criteria. If I click on the number, it'll display the studies themselves. If I'm interested in this first one, for instance, I can request it. The system invites me to add it to a research project that I already have started. So I can add it. And the system basically tells me you've added that study into your request. Now, I'll note this is an example of the first class that Ida spoke about, the sharing directly on the Vivli platform. For this study, the data is listed here and the data is available directly through the Vivli platform. So let's suppose I want to branch out from COVID to something like influenza. As I said, my topic is overly broad. When I type in this combination of terms, influenza and TIV, the system reports that it's found 12 studies. Again, if I click on that number, it will list those. And if I want to request this first one, for instance, I can add it to the project that's underway. In this case, this is an example of the second case that I described, where we're sharing through a partner platform. The system, first of all, lets me know that this data is available through a partner platform. And when I say yes, it actually gives me an opportunity to request this data directly, directly on the Vivli partner platform. So if I click that, notice it brings me to ImmPort. And with the study available at this point, I can click download, identify myself to ImmPort, and then acquire that data through ImmPort. So I can continue to select additional studies as I want. When I'm done, I can fill out a request form. Again, we described that in general terms. Once that request form has gone through the whole process, if I'm integrating data from multiple resources, what Vivli will do will be to provision a secure research environment. We can take just a quick look at that. The secure research environment, as the name suggests, is secure, so you're not able to bring data in and out. And it comes pre-configured with a wide collection of tools. And one of the things that we do as part of that provisioning step is place the data in there. And so I now have access to the data in a secure research environment, along with a rich set of tools on which I can base my analysis. So at this point, Ida, I will hand it back to you to continue the conversation.
Terrific. Okay, so yeah, hope that gave you the concrete feel of what it's like to request the data and to work with the partner platforms, and you see the research environment. So that's very helpful. So in summary, Vivli supports NIH-funded investigators, and we ask investigators, any of you who might be on the webinar here, and certainly get it out to investigators that you work with, to connect with us to share clinical research data on Vivli. Again, we are generalist. We accept data on any clinical domain from any country. And we also do have ways to assist investigators on meeting the data sharing requirements that NIH is putting forth for January 2023. For NIH domain repositories that aren't already partnered with Vivli, please consider partnering with us. It will make your data more discoverable and increase reuse, as we've seen with ImmPort, as we've seen with BioLINCC, and your data can then be integrated with Vivli's other members, currently 40 of them, and to drive forward new science, as you see from an example on idiopathic pulmonary fibrosis. And you saw that shown by Stan's demo as well. There are other partner platforms and also initiatives. We have partnerships with many different groups. Some are more disease focused and some are not. And we welcome the opportunity to discuss collaborative opportunities that you may have in mind. So now we will move over to questions and comments. And we can start off here. I'm going to stop screen sharing and we'll have the presenters back on camera as we move over to our questions. Okay. All right, so the first question here is that Vivli interacts with several data platforms does all of the data live in a sort of an on-prem server at Vivli? One of the design principles of Vivli is that we meet our data contributors where they are. You see that we work with a wide variety of partners. Some are very large pharmas, some are small biotech, some are institutions like my own at UCSF, and everyone has a different approach. And of course, some institutions have been sharing data even before Vivli. Vivli launched in 2018. So some institutions hold their data on their own server, and when a request is made and the request is approved, then they provision the data, anonymize the data, and provision it to Vivli. Another option for people who don't have those kinds of resources and infrastructure on their own is that they can then provide the data to Vivli itself, and then we host that data, and then when requests are made, it's provisioned. So we have multiple approaches and multiple ways to support. Another question is.
So Ada, maybe I
Yeah.
want to add another perspective. I think it is a smart principle, like strategy for Vivli to do that way, because there's like immunological data that have a very complex data models. It's hard for like one platform to hold all this different kind of data. So I think it's very beneficial that the Vivli platform provide the discoverability, like let people to find the data and can access data, and then they route it out to the expert, like the domain repository, to actually benefit the information that the data present.
Right. And yes, anyone else who has comments from the panelists, please feel free to, unmute also. Remember to do that. We're good at that now. Okay, so another question that we had, what kind of information is included in the Vivli usage report that are available to depositors? Do you summarize usage metrics, or do you provide information about individual users? So when a request has been approved, that actually is on the Vivli website, and you can go and see that right now. And that's actually quite interesting to see and what people are working on. Once you have shared your data with Vivli and you want to report, that report will include information about individual requests, about the publications that came out from those requests, and then overall usage statistics. This is a part of a project called Make Data Count that we're all also part of GRADE, looking into standardizing on usage statistics so that scientists who are sharing can know what happened to their sharing. I think this is also really important for academic credit. Many of us, that's how we live is by academic credit. And when we share our data, we should also get some benefit from it, not just to track it. And perhaps Ishwar, any comment on that? How are we thinking about tracking certainly the value of data sharing, but how to track usage and how that cycles back into our scientific careers?
Yeah, no, I think we have actually a larger working group that's looking at metrics across the board that Dawe and others are part of as well. So we're looking to find best practices for sharing metrics and sharing these openly in ways that would inform the end user as well as the contributors of the metrics. And I think as you hit it, we're starting with the Make Data Count that's kind of gaining traction across various repositories, and definitely the generalist repositories as part of our funded initiative are adopting that. And I think would encourage others also to look into adopting some of those best practices over there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I just want to mention, I think thanks Ishwar for mentioning that the metrics work, and we put out a report on the survey of about 100 repositories, like what the common metrics they use. I can try to find and put the link out.
Yeah, I think that's part of the whole ecosystem, is when we start working through some of these questions and make it all a seamless system. That's where we're trying to get to. Next question, data has to be de-identified. There's sort of different levels of disclosure risk. So Vivli requires anonymized data, which means that the key between the participant and the data is actually broken. So for the public use file, when the data is anonymized, is really just that's the level of risk that we're asking for. And then another technical question: when data is stored outside of Vivli, how does Vivli pull it into the Vivli secure analytic environment? For data that's stored in a repository like BioLINCC or ImmPort, data will be pulled down from BioLINCC or ImmPort and then uploaded into the secure environment. That's how it would get into the secure environment to be combined with data that's provisioned from, say, a pharma or other platform. Yeah, I'll just knock off some of these questions. Is data available to NIH intramural investigators for free as well? Indeed, that is the case. How does a partner repository share information about their studies to include in, do you, for instance, have a metadata exchange protocol or format? So we are working as part of GRAY on the sort of technical mechanisms for sharing data. It is there's a tremendous amount of work on the back end at Vivli to work with our partners to provision data. And what we're doing with the GRAY initiative is to think through, not just for Vivli, but as part of the whole ecosystem with the other generous repositories, some of which do hold clinical trial data, right? That we're working towards a standard. And Dawi, Ishwar, any comments on that?
The only comment I would have is, yeah, I think that's work in progress, starting with something minimal and establishing standards across the generalist repositories. But you may also want to touch on what does a domain-specific repository need to do to share their metadata with Vivli to have established what you've done with BioLINCC or ImmPort? Yeah. What does it take? I think that might help answer that question as well.
Yeah, Dawi.
Maybe I can touch upon that. I think it is a great question. So ImmPort are providing the APIs, application program interface, for people to automatically extract the metadata of import data. And so that is part of the findability of the FAIR principles. And that's how Vivli and ImmPort exchange information. So we can make sure that the information is up to date, and then also like discover the latest the data set available in ImmPort.
Right, and we'll work with each partner, new partner platforms in that way as well.
So Ida, just to add to that, so somebody asked about the link to the desirable characteristics, which we kind of posted the link to that, and so that also addresses, as Dawe said, the verification process of addressing some of the best practices there. So making the APIs available from the repository allows for exchange of the data. So.
Yeah. Great. Other questions? Is there a cost for repositories to participate in Vivli? Sorry, for the NIH ones, not at all. Other repositories, some of the pharma ones, there are membership arrangements that, if you're interested, please reach out to us to discuss. Cost for users to access the data, as I said, none at all to make a request. And then having accessing the data on the secure environment is also free up to a certain amount of time. So we're really trying to foster this reuse cycle where the more data is reused and the more that people come up with results, the more people are willing to share. And I think that's part of what we're trying to do, is get this virtuous cycle going of sharing and depositing. And I wonder if Ishwar and Dawe, have you seen that? Have you seen, this culture sharing, and particularly with ImmPort, Dawe, have you, how has ImmPort been helping to drive the culture of data sharing within your constituency, and are there lessons that you might share with us for sort of broader movement as NIH's data sharing mandate comes down?
Yeah, happy to share our experience. I think data sharing, as you mentioned, Ida, it is a culture activity. And then I think the stakeholders that the ImmPort program trying to do is not just about investigator, it's not just about the user, but also like the program officers. I think and also the program staff that associate with the data sharing activities. For example, like a lot of NIH NIAID RFAs will mention ImmPort as the data sharing repository. So like the people that when start doing the research, they have that expectation in mind, and that kind of drive the circle. And the ones they generated data and then they waiting to share. And I was really happy to see that 1/3 of the ImmPort data do not associate with any publications. So like the researchers just want to share. Even the clinical trial is failed, it's still valuable to the community. So I think that's is hard thing to do, but it takes time and all people involved to help with the sharing efforts.
Yeah, maybe I'll skip to a question also about ImmPort data. The question, if we use ImmPort data, do we need to include the owners of the original data as authors? How do you recognize those who acquired that data? And I think that goes back to this data sharing thing where, great, you share your data, but what if all these people want your data and they want to work with you, or you feel like you need to, but you don't want to, or how are we going to work through that? What's been your experience on ImmPort?
Yeah, I think that's another great question. I think that the community have been working on that, right? You need to give the credit to the people who have done contributions, and then from the publishers, and there is this public declaration of the data citing principles that kind of acknowledged authors, and from the ImmPort side, we mint DOIs for every data set, so that you can cite, like you make it easier for people to cite data. So it's really, I think, up to the user community that they need to show that appreciation, and also like I think participate that a kind of good culture that's supporting each other. I think that's the culture changes what is this about.
Yeah, I think researchers will figure it out. These are opportunities, and we all need to manage opportunities and responsibility to our fellow scientists as well. Ishwar, any comment on that? That really goes to this.
No, I would just emphasize the ability to cite using the DOIs, and I think that's the way to go in terms of giving credit to the data. So nothing more to add than that.
Yeah. And we do need to involve journals in this as well, so that, publishing a data set, should at some point, compare to publishing a paper or any other products, right? These are research products that we all produce. Okay. Let me go through to the next question. Do you hold data dictionaries or require a standard such as CDISC? We do not require CDISC. We strongly encourage it. But I know in academic circles, many people don't even know what CDISC is. But we do absolutely need data dictionaries, and that's something that we need to educate the whole ecosystem about what kinds of standards are reasonable to ask, and what standards will further scientific work. Let's see. Question, work with an NIH domain network, want to aggregate data sets from clinical studies, not integrate them, but aggregate them into a grouping. Does Vivli do that for other groups so people could search on our network studies? I think that's somewhat of an involved question. I think that to date, we're looking at studies as sort of individual studies, and how do we post them and make them searchable. We do have mechanisms for thinking about sort of derivative studies, like, follow-on studies and so forth. But come to us and talk to us about sort of groups of studies and aggregates that we want to make searchable in that way as well. Will this collaboration extend to database of genotypes and phenotypes like dbGaP or the European Genome Archive? Perhaps Dawei, what's the vision, and Ishwar, what's the vision in terms of, Vivli focuses on clinical trial data. What's the thought and experience perhaps from ImmPort and review from NIH on extending this to more the genome data and dbGaP and so forth?
Mm-hmm. So Ishwar, you want to take that?
Yeah, I can take a shot at that. So I think in the larger ecosystem, it's really about connecting relevant data sets that are associated with a study. Or so if you take a publication and you have related data sets, you could have something that's clinical, something that's genomic. So depending on where the data is, these could be kind of connected as relevant data sets. So I think this is really kind of somewhat touches on the other question about just aggregating collections of groups of relevant data sets and making their discoverability easier. So that's where I would leave it. So it's not really about integration, but that said, in the larger scheme of the generalist repositories, you could very well have a collection of data or digital assets coming out of a publication, or not necessarily published, but something relevant to be reusable, that could all be packaged together and made available, versus certain packages could be available in Vivli, but then there are other related relevant data sets that could be in one of the other generalist repositories and could be even tied to a workflow. So you can envision these kind of packages of digital assets that help you reproduce a particular analysis or a study. So that's kind of where I would say that, how the connectedness is in the ecosystem.
Yeah, I would add on to that, like for the domain repository, like ImmPort is all for collaborations. And even that we have they funded ImmPort for a long time, we cannot do everything. For example, that like the geo database is represented gene expression data. So ImmPort does not have that data. We only have ID. So our researchers only deposit data in one place, very curated. And the same thing for like a dbGaP, like I mentioned in the question, like there is a whole the whole genome data, whole genome sequencing data that will be there, and then ImmPort kind of make a link. The ImmPort data is trying to tell a story of the study, and then they rely on all these partners, include the Vivli, that to leverage all these resources to present the value of the data.
That's right, Dawei. So the key is to cross-link between these databases depending on the data type that each of these repositories specialize on.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so it really is an ecosystem. I think imaging is another data type that comes up a lot. And I guess that overlaps then with the STRIDES work, right? The platform for the very large scale data, the petabyte level data. And again, cross-linking there would be important as well. Let's see, is it possible to work with data outside the virtual environment in Vivli? For some data sets, so data contributors, for academic investigators, the data that they share is anonymized and will be downloadable. It's the model that you see with BioLINCC and with ImmPort. So a requester there would be able to just take that data right out onto their own laptop and do their own analysis. For data from some of our data contributors that require that the data only be accessed in the virtual environment, those ones you can only access through the Azure secure environment. And so you can bring data that you've downloaded from BioLINCC or ImmPort into that virtual environment. So it really depends on the data contributors that you're getting your data from, but a good chunk of the data that you can request from Vivli certainly can be used outside of the virtual environment. It's an important question here about sort of rare diseases that can't be anonymized due to the nature of disease. That certainly is an issue we're thinking about. In some sense, that is where the value of data sharing is really, really important. We've also heard from advocates in the rare disease space that they just want it shared. They just want an answer. So this anonymity thing is a concern, but it's in some sense not their major concern. experience, Ishwar and Dawe, on the rare diseases and the question of anonymization. Vivli still does require anonymization. We're exploring approaches around rare diseases, but comments and experience from you two?
Yeah, I think ImmPort, definitely have some data sets that are sensitive. Like, for example, the transplantation data clinical trial doesn't have a big number of participants. For the data, like, really have a risk, high risk, and we do not put it in the public domain automatically. We can ask for the kind of evaluation of the request, but most of the data that are like for ImmPort data do not require any proposal or data application committee. And ImmPort actually has a lot of pediatric data in it, and we have a collaboration with the NICHD. I think you can search a lot of data out there, but I think we do have some consideration for the responsible data sharing.
Ishwar, comments on, and I certainly
No, I think you both covered it. So.
Yeah, it's a challenging one, but one that we very much want to work on. It's very important. We do have a comment that it's been done successfully in the past to anonymize data sets in rare diseases. I think it's both, we've really learned in Vivli that it's both the technical challenges to be solved, but it's also the policy around sharing. It's comfort with sharing, it's trust about sharing, and really those have to go together. And that's another reason why we're so excited to be part of the Journalist Repository Initiative. It is setting those cultural norms. It's the policies that make people willing to share. So even if the technical considerations are met, people still need to feel like that's something they want to do and can do, and will be will be rewarded for that sharing. Mm-hmm. Let's see. I just a very quick question, Dawe. Does ImmPort also have a data API?
Yeah, that's a good question. For certain data that it has, like the clinical data, ImmPort team developed a R package called the ImmPort. You can search it up. There you can type in the study number, and then you can get a lot of clinical data. But there's a lot of other type of data, like, for example, flow cytometry data. ImmPort is probably one of the largest flow cytometry repository, and that is hard to kind of give people like API to download the large number of data. I think it depends on the usage, that what kind of data you need, and then the ImmPort may already have something available. I would encourage with Andrea to contact the ImmPort team to figure out the details.
Great. Yeah, I think the ecosystem certainly focusing on the F and the A, the findability and the accessibility, that's absolutely critical. And I think the institutions and groups are working together very well. Thank you so much to Ishwar and to Dawe and to Stan and others, and to all of you for coming to this webinar. Do know that this was recorded and a link will be shared. And thank you everyone for coming, and please reach out with questions.